like that.
What kind of pictures do you like to paint best today? Are you still deep into Oriental stuff?
No, I'm out of it. I like painting living creatures, that's the whole. Animals, birds, people. I like when we go visit Mrs. White. Will she let you take a photograph of her?
She hasn't so far. I got one of her.
Really?
I got a pretty good one.
Yeah?
A year or so ago.
I really would.
But she's very self-conscious about her looks, like most old people.
Most of them are. I like one of the stories I read once on an artist that was in the South, and he was going around painting some scenes in the old South, and he came across this old farm. It had the neatest old mailbox out front. It was all rusty and falling apart and everything, and he went out and knocked on the door and asked the man if he minded if he painted his mailbox. And the farmer was all embarrassed, and he said, "What do you want to paint that old mailbox for? It's horrible. It's falling down and everything." The artist said, "Don't worry, it's gorgeous. I love it. He says, "I'll be back tomorrow. It's just perfect." He came back the next day, and the old farmer
already painted it.
Yeah, had painted the mailbox, and he put it up right and taken all the rust off of it.
Say something. Say something silly.
I have to say that now I know why actresses wear so much makeup when they're on TV and screen.
Actually, color for color, you look like...
Pretty accurate?
That's pretty close right now.
Yeah. A little too dull. My shirt's a light green.
Yeah, it is. Well, the green's dull, but your face is right. You're not going to the Casbah?
I'm going to the Casbah. I'm going incognito. Actually, I hope so, the way I look.
Well, you're going to be...
You always catch me when I look my worst. You never photograph me, you never take pictures or anything else when I am all dolled up and looking great.
Oh, I do too.
You look a little too
course, if you
perfect for me, maybe. You look horrible now.
If you're going to dress up like little Annie Fanny and things like that, what else can I do?
Annie Fanny.
That's the cutest picture we got of you.
You're right, it's opposite.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I said? I said you're right. I admitted you were right.
We have it on tape.
Coming along. Come a long way. Got a way to go yet.
I'm trying.
Gorgeous day on the deck, and Maggie's here, and Ellen's here, and the general idea is between them they're going to be a sort of a twin Barbara Walters and quiz me on a few things.
Keep telling you it's Barbara Wawa.
Barbara, what?
Wawa, as in Saturday Night Live.
Where did you get that? We know.
Saturday Night Live, Gilda Radner.
Who looks
We
at
don't
Saturday
watch.
Night Live, that vulgar program?
We don't watch it.
Well, that's a lie. Actually, Benny Hill is better.
I look at SCTV or something sometimes.
Try Benny Hill.
We did down at Dick's, but we can't get it.
We don't get it.
Oh, I'll take some and send them to you. They're violent.
What do you want me to talk about?
Well, let's
See,
start
you're
out
supposed to
with,
have the ideas.
what's your birthday?
Birthday?
Yeah.
Well, I was born 1 year before World War I broke out, and it's kind of horrible to tell people that I see elderly people these days, and what I feel people are coming down the home stretch, and they can't remember World War II. And here I can remember World War I. I can remember the bombs, the Zeppelins over the house. We had to run down in the basement under the stairs, which was not the thing to do, but we thought it was at the time.
How old were you at the time?
Well, because I was a year old when the war started, and I would guess I was probably 3 or 4 when...
You have a good memory.
Yeah, I not only can remember the bombs and things, but I remember the place so well that when we went back to England in 1964, which was well, just about 40 years later. I was able to find my way back there and find where I went to kindergarten, and so I must have been at least a year older.
Same bus numbers on the bus?
Yes. Well, in this case, it was a matter of taking the subway to Chalk Farm Station. The kindergarten was just a couple of blocks from that. There was a railroad overpass there, over the London North Western Railway, and I used to sneak down there and watch the trains before I went home. And
from kindergarten?
Yes, and I thought that this was a very adventurous thing to do because it was 2 blocks the other direction, and pretty much in a busy part of town too.
So you were already breaking rules.
It's even interesting to me that I went back to St. George's Square, I think the name of it is, and the house was still there and looked just like I remembered it.
Really?
And not only do I remember the war and the trains and the kindergarten, but I remember seeing lightning for the first time and recognizing. I can remember seeing lightning for the first time.
How old did you think you were then?
Well, we moved from there in 1917. It had to be sometime during the war, and I obviously wouldn't remember when I was 1 year old, and not much when I was 2.
Okay, one fact you haven't given us is your birth date, so we're having
Well,
trouble
it was
relating.
January the 22nd, 1913.
Okay, so 1917 when you moved, you were 4 years old.
So I wasn't over 4 as any of this happened, and probably. I also had a Japanese pencil box that I took to kindergarten. Almost every English school kid went to school with a little wooden box with a picture of Fujiyama on it.
Oh, really?
And this was de rigueur in those days.
Huh.
He can remember looking over the side of the pram and watching the wheels go around.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the wheels clicking on the joints in the pavement. This may have been a very nice time in my childhood because I was living at the time with my Aunt Winnie and her folks in a very big house. They were well-to-do.
Was Grandma with you?
My mother?
Yeah.
Yes, but Dad was away at war. And so probably, I've often thought, playing amateur psychologist, that associating the wheels clicking on that sidewalk, I associated them later with wheels clicking on trains, and this has always been a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
This is symbolic of things being right.
I'd like to know more about this. You're remembering so much because I remember very little.
So do I.
Very, very little.
Ellen says she remembers very little about her childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the difference is. I have a feeling that Carrie, for instance, is going to remember a great deal about her childhood.
Why do you think that?
Well, she already remembers quite a bit from 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, she has a fantastic memory.
My husband.
You'll have to excuse me, dear audience. My questioners are over on the side here, and I keep looking at them instead of you.
No, that's all right. We'll forgive you. That's something you're doing wrong. We'll always forgive something you're doing wrong.
No, we gotta do that.
So, back to your childhood. You associate that with pleasant memories. Do you associate any unpleasant memories? I mean, the war must have been one unpleasant
Yes,
memory.
I certainly did. I was terrified of German Fokkers.
What is a Fokker?
Fokker was a German fighter plane, and it had a big black cross on it. And anything that looked in the shape of a big black cross was scary to me, sort of like snakes to some people. And I can remember a large picture book of warplanes being given to me, and one page had a close-up of one of these German planes being shot down, and it had the perspective was such that the end of the wing was in the foreground with this big black cross on it, and I always made sure that I took both pages and turned them over at once so that I didn't have to see
Sort
that.
of like a child looking at a book with monsters, and he didn't want to look at the monster.
Yeah.
He turns the page so he won't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think this has
any bearing on your dislike of war or
Oh,
weapons?
I'm sure it does. It's interesting that my dad was would have been a professional soldier if he'd had a chance. In fact, he sort of almost tried his hand at it. See, Dad came over here. He ran away from home when he was 16. He lived in England, of course. And his family wanted him either to take over the business, which was pawnbroking, and which was incidentally a very successful business.
I was going to say, I had understood that he had a good position, his family did.
Yes, they were well-to-do.
So was grandmother,
And
right?
pretty much so, yes. They say that wealth only lasts one generation or so in a family. I guess
It's true, but the aristocratic or social...
Anyway, back to Dad. He ran off to America when he was 16 because his folks wanted him to take over the business or be an engineer, and he wanted to be an artist. Well, he came over here and went to Oklahoma as a cowpuncher. And I have a picture, which would be nice to show you on him. And he looks at 16 very much like I looked at 16, very much. And it looks for all the world like he had a cap on the lens of that camera. I hope you didn't.
No, tell us on the...
Tell me something. With your father away so much, did you have any relationship that you...
Not really, and I think that's something I miss. I was brought up almost entirely by women, by my mother and by my Aunt Winnie primarily, and I pretty much lived in a woman's world, which, isn't bad. I still prefer women to men.
What do you think?
For the first 12 years, which were in England, I saw very little of my dad. He was either away at war or he was away working with the companies. He was an engineer with British Petroleum, BP, which, of course, is all over the place here now. Since this was a construction job, he was always on the move, but we didn't go with him.
Did you resent him for that?
No, I didn't have much relation with him, much thought about it. He came home, I looked on him as a sort of a disciplinary type individual. I thought of him coming home to try and straighten me out and take care of the things that Mother hadn't been able to do. She sort of turned over things. They had pretty high standards.
Most Victorian people
And,
did.
no matter what I did, I didn't live up to it.
We trace it back some now.
Yeah.
Did this cause frustration?
I hadn't heard the word frustration. I suppose I think all children are frustrated. I think most parents frustrate their children badly. I think very few parents handle their children properly, which is unfortunate.
Did you see any drawbacks to being brought up by 5 women? You said you thought not.
Well, the drawbacks showed up later in that I grew up completely unfamiliar with sports, playing games and things, which
Or with other children.
Or with other children, which was not the fault of being with women, but just being just the happenstance. There were no children around.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Being isolated and neighbor-wise.
No one to play with.
By the time I went to kindergarten, I started kindergarten at 4 in England. And by the time I went to kindergarten, I had already had no relationship with children of my own age. So I really didn't relate to the kids in school. And this followed all the way through school. It followed through even today. I never had very many close friends.
Well, what about your younger brother? How much difference in age is there?
Well, there's 6 years difference. And
there is that much.
And I got the word that I was going to be shipped off to Birmingham rather suddenly, and my Uncle Fred, whom I hadn't met before and haven't met since, but was a delightful man as I remember him. He took me on the train to Birmingham from London.
For why were you being shipped to Birmingham?
Well, I didn't know.
Ah.
But
Okay.
it wasn't long. This time I was staying with my grandparents, Grandma and Grandpa Genders, and I never got along with Grandma Genders. Grandpa Genders was a silvery-topped, white-haired man, a businessman who really didn't relate to any of the children in the family at all. He had his own thing. He was not a bad soul. I never had any problems with him. Grandma was a witch.
I've heard that before. In fact, your mother told me that.
She was a martinet, a tyrant. She ordered everybody and everything around. She had two daughters, Elsie and Annie. Annie just died recently. Elsie, I think, is probably the pattern for my ideal of a woman. She was, looking back, very cute, and she liked me real well. She'd spent a lot of time with me. I enjoyed that. But I hadn't been a Grandma and Grandpa Genders very long before I got the news that I had a brother. And my response to this was, as soon as I got home, I'd put him in the dustbin and put the lid on. And dustbin's a garbage can, for those of you who don't know. And this pretty much tells what I thought of my brother, and probably he has felt that I felt that way about him
All the way along.
quite a long way through life. We get along a lot better now than we ever did. He began to grow up, 3, 4, 5 years of age, and he was very destructive. Here I had taken care of. I couldn't stand to see anything broken or out of place or wrong, and I think that I have a feeling that Carrie is a little bit like that. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
she takes very good care of everything.
And everything was in perfect order. He came along and made a point of breaking everything. And of course, I had quite a set of trains and things that I was proud of. And almost from the day he was old enough to get around, I never had a train set that ran properly or was complete or had all the wheels on or whatever. From then on, and of course, I resented this very badly. And there was a great deal of friction over this. But I think out of this, I was sent away to school. All of a sudden, I was told, you're interested in boats. I didn't know I was interested in boats. I knew I was interested in trains, but so they sent me away to a boarding school run by the Navy. A dastardly thing to do for me.
Why do you say that?
Well, because I'm pacifist at heart. I already had no use for wars.
Oh, yes.
And I felt like I was in prison from the day I arrived at that school. And I was there for 3 years. And it's interesting that I would never gotten out of it until I was a teenager if we hadn't come to this country, because you had to buy your way out. Now, I don't know how they picked this school because it was an orphanage. Not all the kids were orphans, but I would say probably 90% of them were. And this was an uncle of my Auntie Winnie's said that it was a very good school and well run and had a good reputation, which looking back, as those things go, I'd say it probably was. Discipline was very, very strict. And
your family seemed to be disciplinarian.
well, most English people are.
Yeah.
The schools are much stricter, and they still are. The better schools. I was talking to, Felicity that was over here a while back, the daughter of friends in Bristol. And I better not cover up the microphone there.
How did you do academically with all this stress factor you were working against, of being unhappy?
Well, academically, I expect it can be said that I'm not a scholar. I'm just reading recently that basically all lefties are dumb bunnies,
I disagree.
Well,
I heard we're all superior.
They have learning disabilities. No, that's not true. They're not dumb bunnies, but they have learning
Oh,
disabilities.
yeah, I agree with that.
And the way it started out, I was always scared of school. I was scared of anybody in authority, and they pretty much made you wanted you to feel scared.
If you were scared of authority, the little boy who trotted off 2 extra blocks in the wrong direction to go view a train is not somebody particularly scared of authority. Where did you think you developed that?
It's a little hard to remember all the. I was powerfully interested in trains. That overcame a lot of inhibitions for one thing.
I see.
And incidentally, when I was back there in '64, as far as I can remember, these rail yards hadn't changed. But the trains were very frustrating because they had, just like they put here, they have high walls with wires so that kids can't climb over or throw anything on the tracks and that sort of thing. So I had to carefully find little chinks here and there that I could see through and of course it was kind of amazing to go back and find that this wall's only yay high and I can see right over the top of it.
It's about belly button height, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That school's discipline was very strict. Tell them about some of the things you had
Well,
to do.
the schools, they're all strict. You never spoke to anyone in class. You never spoke to the teacher unless you were spoken to, and you were never spoken to individually except to recite or answer a question or something. I can't remember in grade school any conversation ever with a teacher, on a one-to-one basis. And if you did anything wrong, even in the 7th grade, just before we came to this country, I was already 12. I did an arithmetic problem wrong. I was a penny off. And I was called up in front of the class and cane across my hand, which was standard punishment for being careless, not thinking. And this is very standard. And it's hard to know whether it's good or bad. We in this country, which I feel is a little more humane in many ways, we now have sloppy people who don't do their jobs right, and they're not dedicated.
Children who don't
Over
learn.
in England, I don't know whether it still is, very important to do things right, especially if you were being paid to do them. There was a feeling that you had a great responsibility. Yeah. Leaving at 12, I can't claim to know too much about what English would think about.
Gracious, the amount you remember for 12 years is staggering.
How
to me.
did you feel, or how did you receive the news that you were coming to the United States?
Oh, I didn't receive that at all well. I got that again by letter when I was in this boarding school. And,
again, very indirect and sort of harsh and coldly presented.
I think my parents didn't have the guts to
tell you any of these things.
I don't know whether this was normal in most families, but that's the way it happened. Well, famous last words, I can remember telling the kid next to me when I got the mail, I'll never go, no matter what. I'll never go to America. And their famous last words.
Can you put into words why you felt that way?
Oh, I think, most kids don't like to be uprooted.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Yeah.
You've heard my famous story that if there's anything wrong with me, you can blame it on the trauma of moving from London to Kokomo, Indiana.
That'd traumatize anybody moving from London to Kokomo, young, older.
Well, it's basically the same thing as moving from New York to Kokomo.
Right.
Kid that age.
That's what I mean.
Kid that's relatively sophisticated, riding subways and things to school and that sort of thing.
By himself.
By myself, well, yeah, of course.
Well, general cosmopolitan dwelling or living is so far advanced,
And
usually.
then there's a famous story. The very first month we were in Kokomo, we moved into a house next to a family that had a boy the same age as me, which I thought was a good deal. It turned out he was not very interesting to me. So one day, it was a hot August, I said, let's go downtown to Kokomo. This was a distance of about 3/4 of a mile. And he said it was too hot to walk down there. And I said, well, we'll go on the streetcar. Tram to me. He says, oh, he says, I don't think my folks would ever allow me to ride on one of those. And I thought, God, what kind of a place have I come to?
You mean Kokomo had trams?
Yes, they had streetcars.
Oh, it wasn't
Yeah,
that countrified then.
They had streetcars, and well, you'd be surprised in those days of the little towns that had streetcars. Sometimes they only had one line that ran up and down Main Street, but Kokomo had about 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 lines, all in different directions.
Tell why you came to Kokomo.
Oh, well, I came to Kokomo because, well, I'd probably have to go back further. My dad felt, like many other people in that time, that opportunities were better in this country than they were back in England, and he was right. Although things didn't go particularly well for him, and the timing was bad. He came over here to sort of case the place in 1923, and worked a while in Cleveland, and had a good job that he liked very well, but since he was only here on a temporary visa, he couldn't stay with her. And he went to Kokomo because he knew that to bring the family over here, he had 2 options. Either one, to get on the quota, as they called it, which meant you could immigrate in order, which was going to take 12 years at that time. The United States had been cutting down on immigration very considerably because they'd had all these hordes of people in early in the century, and it was getting too much. It was for the first time in the 20s that they were cutting back. And for England, the list was long enough that it was going to take us about 12 years to get over here. Well, that's no good. Dad was 48 at the time. 48 in 1925, anyway. And so the other option was to come at the invitation of a relative. Well, now, my mother's great-uncle, Tom, was one of the founders of Kokomo. One of the founders of White Kokomo. There were already Indians there for a long time, Miami Indians.
What was his full name? Thomas Penn, which is the same family as William Penn, but I can't give you the connection really. I'm going to have to stop this. This is going to be boring. No, it
No,
isn't.
but you gotta stop because I gotta take a break. Oh, if you're not recording
Ellen
yet.
and I were discussing why some people remember things. She thinks I remember my childhood so well. It doesn't take any effort. I can remember a lot of things. I know at 2 years old we were down in Ferndown, for instance, a little country village not far from the south coast. And I can remember playing Ring Around Rosie with some children, one of the few times I did play with children my own age. I can also remember sticking my spade in a little stream, which when I went back many years later, I found was nothing more than a curb, just about 2 or 3 inches deep. I thought it was a great big stream at the time. Just little things I thought of. Where were we?
You were talking about your family coming at the invitation of a prominent relative in
yes,
Kokomo.
right. Well, so Uncle Tom did make that invitation, and we came over here in 1925 in July. And
how did Grandma, your mother, feel about this move?
well, I think at the time anyway, she was very philosophic. But actually, neither of them ever accepted America. Mother came to do it in her later years. I think she began to realize she had no friends back in England as she got older. And she had certainly made a number of good friends over here. But they missed everything, and all day long, every day, all I heard was comparisons between England and what they didn't do right and what they did do right over there, and how life was cheap here, and this sort of thing, and the quality of everything was so poor here, and sadly enough, as I look back, I think probably some of it was probably true. I'm not sure of that.
No symphonies with theaters?
Well,
Yes,
how did
you see, we came to Kokomo. In 1925, Kokomo was an entirely different place to what it is now and to what any small town is now. Before the days of television and radio, well, radio had just come in. These were real frontier towns, really. There were even some wooden sidewalks in Kokomo. And the only time there was any life in town was Saturday night, when all of the farmers and their families came in and they just cruised around on foot in overalls, like it's sort of like the kids cruise around in cars today. They just wandered around the public square, and there was no good music. You could buy if you had money records of Gallicucci and Philadelphia Symphony and things like that, but they were the old type acoustical records. They weren't made electrically, and they were hardly worth listening to. There were no concerts. There were no cultural institutions or anything. So all that came with a bang, beginning just before World War II. But with the advent of radio and the talking picture, things began to change fast, and so-called culture began to spread
Is it
across
not
the
a
land.
fact that your parents actually went from horse and buggy and no electricity days to space shots and moonwalks and...
That's true. I think my parents, my mother particularly, had a span of life that was remarkable. She grew up in, you say horse and buggy, but you do have to remember that even in her childhood there was a well-developed rail system in England with pretty fast trains.
But no automobiles.
No automobiles.
No airplanes.
No airplanes, no radio, no electricity.
None of the things we take for granted.
No electricity, no telephone. And in fact, we had few of these things until we came to this country. One of the interesting things we did have is plumbing. I had never seen an outdoor privy until I came to this country.
Really? That's interesting.
Which kind of surprised a lot of people over here. Yeah, I had to stop the tape there for a moment. I had never seen an outdoor privy until I came to this country.
Really? That's interesting.
Which kind of surprised a lot of people over here. Yeah, I had to stop the tape there for a moment. Ellen was asking me if we went to symphonies and things over there. Yes, the answer is I was quite a concert goer. Mother made a point of going to Queen's Hall and other. She was very particular about the movies we saw. We only went to movies that had full orchestras to accompany. This was the days of silent pictures. She wouldn't think of going to a movie theater that only had a piano, and she only later became used to a theater with an organ. I used to go every Saturday afternoon to see Tom Mix or Charlie Chaplin with the neighbor kid. This was later on, before we came to this country.
Oh, in England.
In England, yeah.
So you must have felt you were in a very barren land when you got over here.
That's just the way it looked. You know, I could have gone to the middle of Australia or the middle of Africa or someplace and been just as lost. And so it's rather surprising that we've adjusted so well to living out here in the mountains of West Virginia.
Well, now I understand why you really like to live near a cosmopolitan area.
Yeah, I would
or have
survive if I
access to
didn't
it.
live.
close to a city of some sort. This is an ideal combination right here. It's only 45 minutes into the nearest subway
Speaking
station.
of right here, where is right here?
Oh, right here? Well, I think at the outset I mentioned that we were talking on the deck of our house on the mountain here in Lyndon, Virginia. If not, that's where we are.
So don't I remember some point about the time, some point your parents living in Delaware? Your father
Oh, yes.
did some paintings in Delaware.
Well, my family was very restless. As I say there, I don't think they adjusted to this country at all. We lived in no less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 houses in 8 years in Kokomo, which, looking back, must have been a terrible expense to them because part of that was during the Depression. Dad,
Was this due to economic strife moving you down in houses, or just a desire?
well, up and down, and someone might accuse us of leaving the houses rather than cleaning them up.
I've heard you say that before.
I really can't remember what was back of the thinking and moving so much, but Dad was restless. He never really found himself, unfortunately, until World War II came along, when he did move to Delaware. Got a very good job, very much like the job he had in England, the first job that paid well in this country, and with the Atlas Powder Company. And unfortunately, he'd only had it a year or so when he died of cancer. It's hard to believe that next year it'll be 40 years ago since he died.
Let me enjoy this beautiful, beautiful view that I've never
Around, and it just makes it very difficult to paint. You can't paint fast enough. So, back to where we were. Now, what I would like is a chronological ordering of where you lived when you came to the United States. You came to Kokomo, and just quickly, Kokomo, where to where to where to where until you got married.
Okay,
Then we'll go back to Delaware.
go back to Delaware. All
No.
right. We came to Kokomo in 1925, and as I told you, we lived in about 8 places
Right,
in Kokomo.
right.
In the same month I graduated from high school in 1932, in June, we went to Indianapolis, and we lived on the north side of Indianapolis, and the folks still continued to move around quite a bit.
Okay.
It was in 1933, on March the 18th, that I met Ellen.
Ah, okay.
So next year, that'll be 50 years ago. This is 1982 for those of you on the watching the screen.
Mother. Did you stay in Indianapolis now for the rest of the time, but your parents continued to move?
No, I lived with my parents until 1937.
In Indianapolis.
In Indianapolis, and during that time, Dad worked for the Indiana State Highway Commission as an engineer. And it's very interesting that he designed most of the bridges on US 40 between Indianapolis and Terre Haute.
Oh, I didn't
He did
know
a lot
that.
of the basic design on that. He was a good engineer, and probably not recognizing that. Oh, he always worried about being an alien. Although he was an American citizen, he'd become naturalized. He, for some reason, felt that aliens weren't liked in this country, and it's not true. I've never experienced any animosity on the part of anyone because I was English.
Do you think part of that could have stemmed from the fact that they just weren't comfortable in the United States, period, themselves?
Partly, I think so, and partly it was the fact that he'd come over just after the big wave of Italian and Southern European immigrants, which were resented by some people,
Right.
and the Irish and the rest of them,
Right.
which, rightly or wrongly, they were resented. They took jobs, and
Well, basically, I think anything different or foreign is a problem on both sides. Humanity has a hard time handling or adjusting, as much as they'd like to think they do. One interesting question I have for you about Grandpa's artwork. In our attic and on our walls in our house, I grew up with my grandfather's artwork, which I thought was absolutely exquisite, especially the one painting of World War I, where the soldiers were crossing the bridge, the pontoon bridge, and all the dust and everything. It's a magnificent piece. And then the other religious one that was unfinished in our attic. He came to the United States to pursue an art career, and yet somehow it appears he never seemed to really get moving on it. Or is this something I am not filled in on?
Well, I don't think he came over here to fulfill an art career, although he may have wished he could.
Oh, I misunderstood.
I
I thought
think he
earlier you said he did.
I think he came over here to just for a better opportunity for himself and for us kids. I think he saw very little opportunity, job-wise or money-wise, staying in England. He was quite good. He lacked originality. A lot of his paintings were just paintings of drawings that he found. He did a certain amount of original work, and all of it I thought was quite good. He had quite a bit of mood to his picture, especially landscapes, which I thought he was best at. But didn't think he was so good with people. He was not, like his son, he was not a person who could sell himself. And this is a big handicap, and he never had anyone that
May I clarify something? It sounded like you said he was not like his son. He couldn't sell himself. Now,
I mean, he was like his son.
okay. Like his son, he could not sell himself.
If I could sell myself, I would have done better than I have.
Okay. Why, you just weren't comfortable with that kind of a role, and neither was he.
Right.
I noticed a lot of times, it seemed to me as a child, a lot of opportunities came your way without you having to sell them. And I don't know whether that was because I was a child and looking at it from a child's eyes, which simplifies things, or that there were things involved as to, why you were not progressing with these opportunities. One I remember was something about Hollywood, being a cameraman in Hollywood. Do you know I never forgave you for not going to Hollywood and being a cameraman?
I think there are a lot of things that you didn't forgive me for. There's a lot of things you didn't forgive me for.
I never forgave you for being vice president.
Yes, you wanted me to be vice president of the company, just like that. Because if I put these sunglasses on, I might look a little more official. Most men that wear sunglasses look like speed cops to me. No, I really I'm not competitive, and I never had much desire to go out and compete with the Hollywood crowd, and I vowed never to join a union for any reason at all, and so that limited some of my opportunities.
So how should I explain or question this? Were you competitive with your brother? Did you find yourself competing with him at all?
No. My brother lived in a different world. I hardly was aware of his existence most of the time. He was 6 years younger. He was, for instance, in the 6th grade when I was going into high school, and 6 years makes a great difference. And I didn't know any of his friends, and he didn't become involved in anything I did. And there had been this rift from
the beginning.
From the beginning, which sort of intensified this difference.
This separation. So your
I should tell you, too, a little bit about us as a family. Well, we got along pretty well. Uh, we didn't have fights, per se, so much as violent arguments. But beyond that,
well, how do you?
we had no running animosities. There were no grudges, which I'm glad of.
Can you explain to me what the difference is in your mind between a fight and a violent argument?
Well, yes, a fight where you are downright malicious and throw things and abusive, whereas you can argue to the ceiling if you want, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not sure how productive it is. As I grow older, I think maybe arguments are kind of useless because what you're doing is just showing your viewpoint from where you sit and not from where the other person sits, but pros and cons for it.
Didn't you ever feel like picking something up and smashing it?
No, I never did. See, I'm not violent that way. Never did.
Never, ever wished you could?
No, I never wished I could, and I don't like people that do those things. I regard that as a weakness. Of course, I was always a great one for feeling that everything should be under control all the time. I know it can't be, but I feel it should be.
Don't you feel that develops internal frustration? Not having an outlet.
Well, I've heard it said, but I have never felt that that I was really frustrated. There are some words in the language that I don't have much, maybe a shock to you, but several words in the language that don't mean much to me. I hadn't thought about frustration before till you mentioned it, but frustration really isn't in my book. But just for kicks, since you're trying to find out something about me, the word fun doesn't mean much to me. Fun is a word that's elusive to me. People have fun on trips. I enjoy trips, but people have fun playing games. Games generally don't do much for me, so I guess I'm not a fun person.
But you enjoy your water pipe game. Don't you have fun doing that?
Well, to a point, I guess.
Well, if it's only to a point, why do you do it?
I don't often. Mostly to accommodate other people. The other word is loyalty, which is a much more complicated word. Some people would maybe distrust me if I said I didn't believe in being loyal. And so I hesitate to bring up the subject because the last thing I want to feel is that I'm not trustworthy. But loyalty in my book is something that has to be earned. It has to be earned by a parent, by a company, by a country, by a child. Naturally, if a person gets into trouble and it's not their fault, you stick by them. But people have to earn loyalty, which no longer is loyalty. People stick by people that do the right thing. I don't think you ought to stick up for a person that does the wrong thing, or a country that does the wrong thing, or a company that does the wrong thing. And of course, this comes down again to opinion, and you have to pitch yourself against the person or the individual or the organization that you're talking about. For instance, you may think the company's doing the wrong thing, and it may not be from their perspective. So you've got a decision to make whether you want to stick with them or fight them.
Well, that same goes for family.
But I don't believe in blind loyalty.
No, I don't believe blind loyalty is a good thing.
Yeah, they make antifreeze and ever-ready batteries and lots of different kinds of chemicals. It's a great big chemical plant in Charleston, still is.
And what did Grandpa do there?
He was a pipeline engineer, laid out pipes and designed piping layouts, which was his chief. Although he did bridges too in Indiana, he was really a pipeline engineer. He worked for an oil company, as I told you. Then they only stayed in Charleston for a short while, and went back to Indianapolis, and frankly, I can't remember what they did for a while, but not for very long. Perhaps he went back with the state highway people. And that was when David was born. And they were there at the time David was born, and if you saw our home movies, you'd see a fancy christening party we had at the house he lived at for a short while. And then the war was on. This was 1940, and Dad moved to Delaware, as I previously mentioned, and passed away in 1943. Mom came back in 1948 after trying to support herself, addressing envelopes and babysitting for fancy clients like the DuPonts. She really enjoyed her stay there, but it became very difficult to pay rent and utilities and things, doing jobs like babysitting and addressing envelopes. So she came back to live with us, and we bought this big farmhouse out north of Indianapolis, mainly to accommodate her and our growing family. By this time, Ted was born, and of course you had come along during the war, and
Is that why I'm such a feisty thing?
well, it might be. And so that kind of brings us into an era when you know more about it firsthand than it was during the 40s that we had such a good time each summer going up to Lake Freeman and staying in Fred Phillips' cottage. It was a log cabin that on the edge of a lake, and we were very fortunate to have this for a week or so every year for years and years. In fact, from 1943 until 1954 we did this.
I knew it was for a long time.
And it was the second best thing to the passes that you got for us.
I agree. I still look on Lake Freeman as being one of the best times in my life. All the trips up there. They hold some very good memories. I like the bunk bed. I like being on the top of the bunk bed. Isn't that funny how you remember something like that?
Fred was a great guy. In fact, it was he who made it possible for us to get our big house on College Avenue.
Oh, really? I was not aware of that.
Yes, he loaned us the fantastic sum of $500 interest-free to
Make the
down payment.
Oh, how did you meet Mr. Phillips?
Well, Fred was on the vestry of the Episcopal Church that we were a member of and had been for years, All Saints Church in Indianapolis. And I'd just known the family for a long time. They had children about our age, a little younger maybe.
It's funny, I don't really remember socializing with them, even for all the lovely things they did for us.
Our social contacts with them were rather formal, strangely enough. We would visit occasionally. I don't ever remember them coming out to the house other than just in the afternoon for a casual visit, mostly to see what we'd done with the house. Even in the shade here, the light's kind of bright. I'll risk looking like a state trooper.
Okay. Actually, I think it lends an air of intrigue about you.
Well, you could say that about all these Haitians and others that...
No, let's not get on that subject. Before we get involved in family and growing up and kids and all that, let's go back to you and your likes and employment and how you got into photography, how you got into public service. You mentioned some point about working on a road, interviewing people on a highway or something.
Yeah, well, I worked for the highway department through the Depression several years, as a matter of fact. And it was a strange job. It was a month on and a month off.
Well, that should have been nice.
And, well, it was nice, but of course it didn't make that much money. It got nicer in as much as it gave me time to chase after Ellen. And also, I got a part-time job in the spare time, working with a man who's still around now, Bob Annis. And he was in the business of making industrial movies. So this was right up my alley. But to the beginnings of photography, well, I didn't, I should start at the beginning. Back in 1928, I was rummaging through some drawers in the house and found some Velox photo paper and some tubes of chemical, which had come, like everything else, from England. Because when the folks came from England, they picked up lock, stock, and barrel and brought everything.
Well, who was the photographer in the family in England?
Both Mother and Dad played with printing pictures
really?
since the beginning of time. When Mother was a girl, she developed and printed all her own pictures. A lot of people did that in those days, and my Aunt Winnie did it.
I was not aware of that.
And strangely enough, although we'd been in this country 3 years, the paper was still good. Well, I got interested and made a darkroom out of a closet, and all through high school made money by doing photo finishing for the kids at the grand price of 2 cents a piece for prints.
Oh.
And in fact, I got covered up times doing this. This is a time when photo finishing was just done in the basement of drugstores. There was no big photo finishing plants. And so it was not hard to be competitive with them. Even back then, they charged anywhere from 7 to 10 cents a piece for print, so it was easy for me to underprice them and make a profit. That and a paper route kept me going all through my high school years. And so I was never really broke like some kids.
Well, now, you say you were making prints. Were you also doing your own photographing at the time?
Yes, but not really seriously. That came much later, as a matter of fact. Primarily, I was still interested in movies. In fact, I practically worshiped movie projectionists and thought the greatest thing in the world would be to be a movie projectionist, sort of like a kid wanting to be a railway locomotive engineer. But I became disillusioned with that pretty quickly when I saw how monotonous and dead-end it was, and how you had to belong to a union and all that sort of thing. And I did have one crack at it as a strike breaker during a strike in Kokomo, and got to run machines in a little theater there once or twice.
Well, now, you're talking about a projectionist in a theater, not a cameraman on a movie set making movies.
Okay, I'm getting to that. When I got out of high school and got this job with the Highway Commission, stopping traffic and asking questions, it was a traffic survey. The very first day, a car goes wild and hits the back of the car I've got stopped and hits me and bowls me clear across the road, clear across an intersection. And strangely enough, doesn't do any real serious damage, but out of this, I was able to collect a whole $100 in damages, which I immediately plunked on an 8mm camera and projector. And this was in August of 1932, and I believe it was either July or August of 1932 that the 8mm camera hit the market. So I was right up front there with it. So I began making movies. It'll have to be said that I was not really great at it. I mean, I enjoyed doing it, but when I see the kind of work that's done today, I was not really great at it.
Well, when you say you see the kind of work done today, do you mean movies like Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, or do you mean the silent movies that were started, or the movies of your era, as you look back at them today?
My creative approach was lacking, although it was much better than the average home movie maker. I didn't intend to be a home movie maker.
Right.
But my home movie making did pretty quickly settle down to mostly keeping a record of the family. And as you may well remember, it was difficult to do because after the 10th take, you got kind of tired of waiting to open your stocking or eat something or whatever the occasion might be.
Yes, I remember.
But we did get it right finally, and we do have some good pictures to show for it. From my experience with taking these pictures, I was able to ask for this part-time job making industrial movies for Bob Annis, and I worked at that. And that was sort of interesting because it was just at the time sound was coming available to non-theatrical movies, and we got to work with sound equipment. And it was a good, really apprenticeship for me, in a sense, if you want to call it that. Out of that, I got the notion that I might like to work for a large photographic concern, and I wrote a letter to cold turkey to Ag Peransko in Binghamton and told them what I knew and asked if they had a job in their photographic department. And lo and behold, I've always been good at writing letters, too good really. Lo and behold, right in the middle of the Depression, this is in 1935, not exactly in the middle of the Depression, but things were pretty bad. They say, yes, we're interested. If you'll come at your own expense, we'd like to interview you. So I got on a Greyhound bus and rode all the way to Binghamton, New York. And this was a wild adventure for me. I was, just 20 then. And I talked to the big man there, and he asked me loads of questions about 16mm film processing and things. And he says, I see you know your business. He says, if you're willing to work for $20 a week, we'll take you on. Well, $20 a week was sensational back then. And, this was about $100 a month. So I went to work for them. Well, I had a hard time. In the first place, Ag Peransko was a German company, and maybe I had some prejudice against the Germans that showed. I'm not saying I did. It just might be, but I felt I didn't get along with them. I felt they didn't get along with me. I felt they were critical of me all the time. On top of that, I made the horrible discovery that there were college graduates working right alongside me in the same jobs. This was in a photo research lab, much more interesting than I'd hoped to get. And I really think that my work was all right. But I found that I was working alongside college graduates who were only making $16 a week. And one in particular had decided to scuttle me. He was always doing something to make me look bad.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiling tests and this sort of thing. And, what can you do? You can't complain and say, he did it, and it's not my fault. And after several things go wrong, and once or twice things went wrong with my own fault, which didn't help, I was in trouble. So I left there. I didn't really get fired. It made things so difficult that I left. And then I went on to New York City for 3 weeks to see if there were any jobs. But as I say, this was in the middle of the Depression, and I was not good at selling myself, and I didn't find anything. So I came back to Indianapolis, and lo and behold, I hadn't been back very long when a man, a certain John Fish, whom I'd met because I'd developed some of his films when I'd worked for this Bob Annis company. John Fish says, Jeremy said, didn't you tell me that you did some drafting for the Northern Indiana Power Company when you were in high school? And I said, yes. And he says, well, would you be interested in doing something like that for Public Service Indiana? And I said, well, I might be. And he says, well, you know what it's all about. He said, don't you? I had mentioned sometime or other when I was out showing him how to use a camera or something, that when I found out he worked for an electric company and was a chief draftsman, I told him, I said, oh, I used to do one-line diagrams for Northern Indiana Power Company when I was in high school. They used to send stuff over for the high school kids to do. It was a cheap way of getting the work done and an experience for the kids. And so he said, we could only pay you $110 a month. Well, you know, that was something else. And of course, I was going, dating Mom at the time, and even got to the place where we hoped we'd get married sometime, so this began to look pretty good. Well, I went to work with Public Service Company in May 26th of 1936, and was a draftsman for about for 2 years. After 1 year, I got married. We got married, I guess we should say, and that was in May 29th, 1937, just a few days after, over a year after I got this job, for which they gave me a $10 raise in pay. And back then, raises in pay were often pegged to your responsibilities. When David came along, I got another raise, and that's all. But in the meantime, I felt that, you know, the drafting was going to be a dead end, so I had to get more education. I hadn't been to college. So I took a course in electrical engineering with International Correspondence School. So there, particularly then, I don't know about now, they were quite well recognized. And you see them passing one of their courses. It was not as good as college education, but quite good. The company would recognize it. In fact, the company did and paid for it. And it helped me considerably. But along with learning electrical engineering, I also learned what I already suspected, and that was that I could add 2 and 2 and make them come out to 4.
And that's something I can't do.
And this is rather a serious drawback in any kind of an engineering field.
A drawback?
Yes, not being able to add 2 and 2.
Oh, I thought you said you could add.
Substation and have to count the 10,000 volt spring washers, have them all counted out exactly right and estimate the cost of them. This wasn't for me. So I pondered other ways to go, but by now I developed some responsibilities like David had arrived. The war was on, and I'd had to sign up for the draft. I signed up as a conscientious objector, of course, not knowing what would happen out of that. That never became an issue because I was listed as a essential defense worker, as a electrical engineer.
Oh.
And so I never even heard from the draft. And of course, I was married, and actually a little old too. That's hard to believe back then. I was 139. I was 26, and they just weren't taking people that old if they had any responsibilities, let alone if they were listed as defense workers. So I never heard from the draft, which I'm very thankful for, because I don't think I would have ever succeeded in the military, even if I hadn't been a conscientious objector.
Why do you say that? I mean, is it that strictly on your pacifist feelings, or because of the military and its particular makeup?
I just don't work very well with, I'm just not a team worker, I'm a loner. I'm always lost in a crowd of people. You know, I can go to a convention, and I've told people this, and most people go to conventions to meet people. I go to see new gadgets or learn something, which took me quite a few conventions to realize that you don't learn much. But I'll go to a convention in Chicago for a week and never talk to anybody except the waitresses that serve meals or so on, and say hi. And
Don't you feel that there are people there who can give you information? And
yeah, I'll talk to somebody perhaps, but I'm not good at talking to people, strangers like that. They usually don't seem to talk on my level, or I don't talk on their level. Some of this has changed a little bit in recent years. I get along with people a little better.
do you think your traveling had anything to do with that?
I don't know. For one thing, I had to agree with a person 100%. They had to think like I did. I had to think like they did, or else I had no use for them. And while this is still pretty much true,
Don't you think that closed out a lot of avenues of information to you?
yeah, it did. It contributes to me being a...
Take from this man who was a loner to a man who was married to a very, very wonderful woman.
And what I want to know is how he met that woman.
Oh, well, we were both Episcopalians and both belonged to youth groups, two different churches, mine out in Irvington, the suburb of Indianapolis, and Jim in a downtown church, All Saints. And their youth group decided to visit our youth group one Sunday night. And so there they arrived, and I saw this man standing alone at the top of the stairs and was surveying the place. And I went up and said hi. And next thing I knew, we were talking together, and next thing I knew, he was walking home with us, my sister and I, walking us home. And I reached out and reached for his hand and held his hand, and next thing I knew, we were dating. And he just seemed to be, just something seemed to click for me, and I either was emotionally touched by someone who was a loner, I'm not really sure now, but basically I guess I've been a friend of those who seem to be loners.
You said a little like stray dogs, cats.
The stray dogs. I started saying that I wasn't going to.
I like it.
You like it. Well, but anyway, something hit a chord in me, and it blossomed into a friendship and then into romance.
Before we go too far into that, because this is sort of where we left off with Dad, and later on we're gonna take on with the two of you. Let's go back and start all over from when were you born?
June 22nd, 1916.
My goodness, she hesitated. I thought for a minute she wasn't going to remember.
I can't remember. We went up into Canada once, and I had to give my birthplace to get back into the United States, and I couldn't remember where I was born.
Okay, well, we're going to try and spur that memory a little bit here. Okay, you were born 1916, where?
In Waukesha, Wisconsin.
And did you live there long?
No, only 3 years.
Do you remember much of it?
Not from that, but from summers later on, where we spent at least months, I would guess, with Aunt Letty, my dad's sister, up in Waukesha.
Did Aunt Letty have a personality like your dad?
Oh, very much. She was a terrific person. Very strong-willed, where Dad was very positive, but very quiet, I would guess. Auntie had a very domineering personality, perhaps I might say. and a very positive approach to things. And sometimes I wasn't very happy with it because I didn't feel very good a lot of the time. And at dinner time, if I were slouching, Aunt Letty would say, sit up straight and smile or don't come to dinner.
That's not particularly bad for a child.
No, it's not bad for a child. Perhaps if I'd had more of that, I might have a slightly different personality. I don't know.
Well, let's see about your dad.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to what little I can remember, what little I know about my dad's background. His parents were English, and his dad married twice after his first wife died, and came to the United States with his family. And some of Dad's brothers and sisters are half-brothers and sisters.
And English.
All English born.
Was your dad born in England?
No, Dad was not born in England. He was one who was born in the United States. And I hope I have this right. Loy would probably remember more in detail. But at any rate, the family was English. They came to Waukesha, and for what reason, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But Dad grew up in America and got an engineering degree and went to Kentucky on an engineering job. And I know no more details about it than that. But there he met my mother. And
she was a Southern belle, huh?
she was a Southern belle, yes, sir. And she grew up with a life of leisure and I would say a reasonable amount of money because she was never allowed to go to work. And her mother had died when she was 16, yes. And Mother had two brothers. Mother, her two brothers, and her father. And her brothers and her dad babied her, apparently. She had never been in the kitchen. She had never done any work. She never, outside of the home. At the time that she met Dad, she loved to ride horses. And apparently they either owned or a relative owned a horse farm where she spent summers riding horses and really loved it. She was a belle who liked dances and really enjoyed living.
Isn't that interesting? I know nothing of Debbie's background like this, but I can see it in what I knew of Debbie.
Yeah,
you could see the delicacy, the sort of...
Mother said Dad had to have an awful lot of patience after they got married because she could even burn water, and I guess that's a statement a lot of women have made. But she really had a hard struggle after she got married, learning all the things about housework.
Did she resent it?
No, she didn't resent it at all. And
I would imagine being married to your grandfather would help. As lovely a person as he was, and cheerful.
To my dad?
Yeah.
Your grandfather?
My grandfather.
Yeah, your grandfather, yes. Dad was a very, very patient man and a tremendous person. And in their own ways, as different as they both were tremendous. Mother was never well after the first child was born, which was Loy. Never really strong.
She was not sick before that you know
Not
of?
that I know of, no. And apparently they had lots of good times when they were dating and in the early years of their marriage. But Mother never was strong. And apparently the birth of each child was harder on her. And so...
Could the diabetes have had anything to do with it, or did that show up later?
That showed up later, but how long she had it, I don't know. She had a number of operations. Apparently she spent about as much time in hospitals as out in certain periods of her life. She had a thyroid operation, what they called a goiter operation back in those days. In the early 20s, and later on, I guess had hysterectomy, and later on another thyroid operation, at which time the diabetes showed up, and the two were complicated each other. That was at the time that David was 6 months old, when Mother was in the hospital, and it was touch and go at that time, because the diabetes and the thyroid were complicating each other, and it took them quite a while to balance everything. But once she learned the basics of taking care of herself with the diabetes, the weighing of the foods and the eating of the proper things, she was in better health than she ever had been since the early years of their marriage. But during the time that I was growing up, Dad did not want any additional strain on Mother, and so he always said, don't ever make your mother tell you anything twice.
So did you?
We tried, yes. Seemed that way. And I don't ever remember being punished.
That's interesting.
Don't ever remember being disciplined or spanked. By discipline, I mean sent to my room or anything of that sort. But though I'm sure as a child I must have been, I remember as a little girl of about, let's see, it was in Bedford. I probably was about 4, and my sister 3 years older than that, and we got identical dolls for Christmas. And we wanted to go somewhere, and I wanted to take my doll with me, and Mother said, no, you are apt to drop it and break it. And I said, no, I won't, and I want to take it with me. So what happened?
You dropped and broke it.
I either fainted or fell or something and dropped and broke my doll on Christmas Day. And it broke my heart. But these seem to be patterns. One time I wanted to go with my sister to the drugstore to pick up some medicine, and at this time I was very subject to fainting, passing out. And Mother said to Loy, don't let Ellen carry the medicine because she's apt to fall and break it. And I talked her into it, and same thing happened. But at any rate, it was a pattern. I could be walking along a little wall along a sidewalk by a garden, and all of a sudden I'd pass out and I'd be on the floor, on the ground.
And they never knew why.
Well, it was a back problem. It was doctor said pressure all along the spine that lowered resistance and made me not very strong. But at any rate.
Well, now, with your mother being of this nature, your father had a business, I understood, that at one time was fairly prosperous.
Yes, down in Bedford, Dad was one of 3 partners, as I understand it, in a construction company that poured concrete forms, buildings.
Is this the business he'd been in when he got married? Was this his career?
He was a construction engineer, and I don't think he was with the same company always because...
But that was his career, his business?
Yes, his business was construction engineering, and he was partners in this business in Bedford, and the business came to an end after they had a gentleman's agreement with the blasting company in the quarry not to blast for so many days after they poured concrete forms for the stadium down at Indiana University. And either the message didn't get out to all of the people responsible for blasting or something went wrong, but at any rate they blasted and they ruined the concrete and the whole thing had to be done over. But at any rate, the ensuing court costs and the whole thing cost the business I mean, caused the failure
Cost
of the
them their business,
Yes,
yes.
cost them their business. And according to my sister, the other two partners grabbed what they could and got out and left Dad to settle all the debts, and he, in his honorable way, sold his home and his car and gave up everything to try and meet the debts
So this
that were
had to
incurred.
be a very, very
Traumatic
traumatic
thing
and
for the
difficult
whole
time.
for the whole family.
Do you remember how the family reacted, or how they stood
No,
up to it, or?
no, I don't remember. I was involved at the time of the move from Bedford to a small town, Mooresville, about 15 miles southwest of Indianapolis, where Dad found a place for us, a home for us, when he started a new business as a manufacturer's representative. I was involved with the problems of moving my favorite cat from Bedford to Mooresville when Mother had said, no, we can't take a cat with us. And I was just heartbroken about it. And my teacher at the time, whose name I can't even remember, I can't even picture her face, said, I'll take your cat. Don't worry about it. I'll give it a good home. And the cat got run over the night before we moved.
Oh, no.
There it was, flat as a pancake in the middle of the street outside the house. But to go back before we leave Bedford, one of the other few memories that I have was when I was in the second grade, and the school, there was a whole block of buildings, a junior high, a grade school, and a high school, exactly opposite our house, all in line like that. And grade school was in the middle. And they came to me at recess on the playground and said, Ellen, your house is on fire.
Oh.
But the teacher wouldn't let me go home at that time. I couldn't go home
Even
until...
though it was right across the street?
I couldn't see the house from there because of the junior high building in the middle, in between. And I couldn't go home until noon. Apparently the teacher thought it'd be better if I didn't see all the fire or something. Anyway, I wasn't allowed to go home. So at noon, I walked out the school building and down to the corner, and I stood on the corner there, and I saw part of the roof off the house and the furniture out in the front yard, including our baby grand piano, and not a soul in sight. And I was scared to move. And apparently I had been standing there a few minutes, scared to death, when Mother came out the door and came and got me.
Oh,
But
you thought everybody was
I thought, I don't
gone.
know what I thought, but I
Yeah.
imagine I thought everybody had been burned up in the fire.
Mm.
And it was just one of those situations that didn't do a great deal of harm to the house. It burned the attic area somewhat, and of course they pour water in.
Yeah,
and
it
you know
ruins
what
the whole
happens,
house.
soak everything.
That's why
So someone had grabbed as much furniture on the main floor as they could. Other people had pitched things out the windows in the
So
upstairs.
this is the second grade for you.
Yes, the first grade I spent at home. I was not well enough to go to school, and Mother taught me. And I loved the course that we had at home with all the phonetics. We had strips that went through a framework to make different words with first letters and different changing first
interesting.
letters and so forth and so on. It was called the Calvert.
Much more interesting than school would have been.
Well, I don't know.
Probably.
I loved that school course, but I hated what I had to do because the doctor had insisted that I stay in bed 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon.
And you wanted to go play.
I wanted to go outside, and by afternoon, I could hear all the children playing after school, and I had to stay in bed. And Mother told me later that my grandfather, who lived with us, her father, said that I'd have been better off out playing than lying in bed crying. And I don't remember crying. I just remember hearing the children outside wanting to be out and play. But
So then, if this was second grade, what grade were you in when Grandpa Haynes lost his business?
I am guessing that it was about the 4th grade.
4th grade. So all this is
Well,
happening
no, wait a
fairly
minute. That
close.
couldn't have been my the 2nd grade for the fire, the 4th grade about when we moved, because we lived about 2 years in Mooresville, and I was at the beginning of the 7th grade when we moved to Indianapolis, 2 years later. Dad refused to move us to a big city where all the houses were jammed up close together, and there were no trees and no yards.
I remember
on the
right.
street.
You showed me the Mooresville house once. It was very pretty, a big,
it
shady
was a
yard.
big house. Yeah.
With a big porch with brick columns. Am I
Stone
right?
columns, I
Stone
believe.
columns?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we lived there, and Dad commuted to Indianapolis, where he built his business as a manufacturer's representative for building materials. And then someone told him about Irvington, the area of big big shade trees and winding streets, and of a house there with a big yard. And it really was a big yard. It had beech trees and oak trees, and the woman next door, Mrs. Hudgel, had a beautiful flower garden. Well, Dad was able to rent that house and move us up there, and then he didn't mind living in the city, having his family
Was
in the
this
city.
house very far from the house that I lived in Irvington?
Strangely enough, not very far. It was through the old Butler campus and about 2 blocks down the street from, I would guess, maybe a mile from the...
Was it down in that real pretty hilly area where my church school was? Do you remember that? Down old hilly area? It's funny, I can tell you which streets to go through to get to it, but I can't tell you the area. It was just lots of hills and curving streets, and it's the only area I remember in Irvington like that.
Church school.
Yeah, where I made my chains, my color paper.
I wonder what church school that was you went to. I don't remember.
Interesting.
That's crazy, the things I don't remember anymore. I'd like to go back and live my life over again and remember all the things I couldn't remember then.
I don't remember much either. We seem